June 6, 2013. Every screen inside NSA headquarters suddenly turned blood red. A classified slide marked Prism had just leaked. It exposed the chilling truth. Google, Facebook, and Apple were secretly feeding your data to the government. Just the day before, another leak had dropped. The NSA was logging every single Verizon phone call. 120 million Americans were being tracked like criminals. The world's most powerful spy agency, with a $10 billion budget and 30,000 employees, had just been exposed by a single person. He was a 29-year-old man. A man who forced the United States government to admit that it had lied to 300 million Americans. 7 years later, a federal court declared the NSA's entire operation illegal. The judge's verdict was crystal clear. The intelligence chiefs were not telling the truth. But how did a junior IT guy, a seemingly anonymous person, gain access to the crown jewels of American intelligence? And more importantly, why did he risk his life, his freedom, everything he had, just to tell you the truth? The answer starts 3 months earlier, in a windowless room, where something impossible was about to happen. Spring 2013, Oahu, Hawaii. A true paradise? Palm trees swaying, tourists sipping Mai Tais. Perfect 78-degree weather, but inside a concrete NSA facility, Ed Snowden sat under artificial light, downloading the unthinkable. He was supposed to be a nobody, just another IT contractor for Booz Allen Hamilton, one face among thousands wearing a security badge. At 29, he looked even younger, almost forgettable, the kind of guy you'd pass in the hallway, without a second glance. And that's exactly why no one noticed what he was doing. Every morning, Snowden swiped his badge into his windowless office, tapped in his passwords, and peered into the digital lives of millions. Scrolling across his screen, it wasn't just metadata, it wasn't just phone numbers, it was the real emails, the real conversations, your Amazon purchase history, your 2 a.m. Google searches, that embarrassing medical question you typed and then deleted. It was all there. He discovered top-secret PowerPoint slides, so secret most members of Congress didn't know they existed. One slide was titled Prism, listing every tech giant you trust as a data provider for the government. Another diagram was named Upstream, showing that the NSA was literally splicing into the undersea internet cables, copying everything that flowed through them. But the tool that chilled him to the bone was called Xcore. Its instruction manual boasted that it collected nearly everything a typical user does on the internet. Want to know what your ex-girlfriend is up to? Just type in her email, and boom, instant access to her entire digital life. No warrant required. 3 weeks earlier, in March 2013, Snowden watched something that changed everything. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, was sitting before Congress. A senator asked him whether the NSA collected any kind of data on millions of Americans. Under oath, Clapper responded, "No, sir," not wittingly. Snowden stared at his screen. He was looking at absolute, irrefutable proof that Clapper had just committed perjury. The NSA wasn't just collecting data on some Americans. They were collecting data on everyone. Your calls, your texts, your location, all stored in massive data centers in Utah, searchable forever. Night after night, Snowden couldn't sleep. He had sworn an oath of secrecy, signed papers that could put him in jail, just for telling his girlfriend about his job. But what he was witnessing was like watching a crime happen in slow motion. The NSA's mission was to protect America from foreign threats. Instead, it was treating every American as a threat. The thought that crushed him was simple. What if his young nephew grew up in this world? A world where every text, every call, every mistake was recorded forever. Where the government knew more about you than you remembered about yourself. By late May, the Hawaiian paradise had turned into a prison in his mind. Snowden made a historic decision. It would either make him a hero or a traitor, depending on who got to write history. He began transferring the classified documents to encrypted drives, not randomly, but carefully, hand-selecting files, to prove one thing only: your government is lying to you. But two questions haunted him. Who would believe an anonymous contractor over the entire U.S. intelligence community? And even if someone believed him, would anyone care enough to act? January 2013, 4 months before the world shifted, Snowden sent his first encrypted email. He created an anonymous identity and reached out to Laura Poitras, a documentary filmmaker the government had placed on a watch list. His message was cryptic: "I have something you need to see." She almost deleted it. Just another conspiracy theory nut, with proof of government secrets. But something about the technical sophistication of the email grabbed her attention. This person knew real things. Things about encryption most hackers didn't know. Next, Snowden contacted Glenn Greenwald, a reporter for The Guardian, who wrote as if he were personally offended by government overreach. But Greenwald barely knew how to use email, let alone encryption. So what does a desperate whistleblower do? He actually created a YouTube tutorial video, Encryption for Beginners, and sent it anonymously. 4 weeks, nothing happened. Greenwald ignored the videos. Too complicated, too much of a hassle. Until Poitras called him, "You need to take this seriously. This is the real deal." By May, they agreed to meet, but where? Snowden chose Hong Kong, a twilight jurisdiction between China and the West. He told his girlfriend he was going on a business trip, kissed her goodbye, knowing he might never see her again. May 20, 2013. Snowden boarded a flight with 4 laptops and one bizarre prop, a Rubik's Cube. He had told Greenwald, "You'll recognize me. I'll be the one holding a Rubik's Cube, like something out of a Cold War novel." June 3. In the lobby of the Myra Hotel, Greenwald spotted a kid, because that's what Snowden looked like, a kid fumbling with a Rubik's Cube. It can't be him, Greenwald thought. I expected someone who looked weathered. This guy looks like he fixes printers. But in room 1014, that printer fixer opened his laptop and showed them the impossible, a secret court order from April 2013. Verizon must turn over all phone records to the NSA. Not some, but all. Every call you had made since 2006, stored in a searchable database. Greenwald's hand trembled as he read it. This was the smoking gun. The government was spying on everyone. Next came the PRISM slides. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple. Every company that swore your data was private. All were feeding information directly to the NSA. That private Facebook message to an ex. The NSA had it. The deleted Gmail draft, where you vented about your boss. They had that to dot after that. Snowden showed them upstream. "This is where it gets scary," he said, pulling up a diagram. The NSA had physically tapped into the fiber optic cables carrying the internet, every email crossing the Atlantic, every Skype call bouncing off a satellite. They were copying it all, storing and searching it later. But Xcore was the worst nightmare. One slide showed an NSA analyst's screen. They typed in someone's email address. Instantly, the system pulled up everything: emails, passwords, credit card numbers, sensitive photos, medical records. Any analyst could do this. Snowden explained. To anyone. No oversight, no warrant, just curiosity. The journalists worked 18-hour days, vetting the documents, writing the stories that would explode like bombs. Snowden barely slept. He knew the NSA's hunters had begun their inquiry. Every day he was free was borrowed time. After 5 days, the first story was ready. Greenwald's finger hovered over the send button. Once this went public, there was no turning back. The most powerful intelligence agency in history would know they had been exposed. They would come for Snowden with everything they had. "Do it," Snowden said. "Hit it." In the next 12 hours, the world would wake up to the proof that George Orwell was an optimist. But would anyone truly care? And when the NSA realized what had happened, how long would it take them to find the source? June 5, 2013, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, The Guardian's website collapsed from sheer traffic. The biggest headline read, "NSA collecting phone records of millions of Verizon customers daily." Within minutes, every major news network cut into regular programming: CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all showing the same classified document, all asking the same question: is this legal? June 6, the PRISM story hit like a nuclear bomb. The Washington Post and The Guardian published simultaneously. The familiar logos: Google's Rainbow G, Facebook's Blue F, Apple's Bitten Apple, all arranged under the top secret stamp. The companies you implicitly trusted were partners in mass surveillance. Mark Zuckerberg issued a statement: "We have never heard of PRISM." The leaked documents said otherwise. Someone was lying, and everyone knew it wasn't Snowden. James Clapper, the man who lied to Congress, went on TV looking like he hadn't slept in days. He called the leaks literally devastating to national security. When asked about his false testimony, he stammered, "I answered in what I thought was the most truthful, or least untruthful way." General Keith Alexander, the NSA director, testified before Congress. Sweat stains soaked his uniform. He insisted the programs had stopped 54 terrorist attacks. Reporters instantly the real number was 0. The bulk phone collection network had never stopped a single imminent attack, not even once. In the meantime, more leaks emerged daily. Boundless Informant, a tool that showed the NSA collected 3 billion pieces of intelligence from computers in the US in 1 month. Then came the international outrage. German Chancellor Angela Merkel found out the NSA was tapping her personal cell phone. Brazil's president discovered her emails had been intercepted. 35 world leaders, allies, not enemies, all were being monitored by the US. Diplomatic relationships that took decades to build crumbled in a matter of days. June 9, 2013. The biggest twist. Snowden revealed himself in a video that would be watched 50 million times. He sat in his Hong Kong hotel, calmer than a lake, and said, "My name is Edward Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I worked for the NSA. I am the source." The internet erupted. Snowden trended globally. Half of Twitter called him a hero. The other half wanted him hanged for treason. News anchors couldn't believe it. This kid, this nobody, had just declared war on the most powerful surveillance apparatus ever built. Within hours, the US charged him under the Espionage Act, the same law used to prosecute World War I spies. The charges were theft of government property, unauthorized communication of national defense information, willful communication of classified intelligence. The penalty could be death. In Hong Kong, Snowden's hotel was surrounded. Journalists, tourists with cameras, and almost certainly intelligence agents. He checked out on June 10 and vanished into a safe house. The US pressured Hong Kong. Arrest him immediately. Hong Kong stalled, claiming paperwork issues. Behind closed doors, China was calculating what was more valuable, a whistleblower or publicly embarrassing the US. But time was running out. Every hour Snowden was free made the US look weaker. The world was watching a real-time chase between David and Goliath. But Goliath had drones, satellites, and endless resources. How long could one man with a laptop run? And where in the world can you hide from a government that sees everything? June 23, 2013, 5 a.m. Hong Kong International Airport. Among the hundreds of passengers boarding Aeroflot Flight Suit 2132 to Moscow, one carried no luggage, except his fear. It was Edward Snowden. He carried a passport that would expire in 3 hours. He walked past security cameras that surely recognized his face. The U.S. State Department screamed at the Hong Kong authorities, "Stop that plane." Hong Kong officials replied, "What plane? We have paperwork issues." Translation: China had just openly defied the United States. The plane took off. Snowden was airborne, technically in no man's land, exactly where he needed to be. The plan was hatched by WikiLeaks' legal team. It was clever and simple. Fly to Moscow. Do not enter Russia. Stay in the international transit area. Catch a connecting flight to Ecuador, maybe Iceland, somewhere with no extradition treaty. But the plan assumed one thing, that the US government would play by the rules. It was a foolish assumption. At Sheremetyevo Airport, Moscow, the moment Snowden landed, the US revoked his passport, not suspended, but revoked. He instantly became stateless, a non-person legally. He couldn't enter Russia, no passport, couldn't leave, no passport, couldn't even buy food. Credit cards were frozen. For 40 days, Snowden lived in the airport, sleeping on chairs designed to prevent sleeping, eating vending machine food, wearing the same clothes for a week. Russian children took selfies with that spy guy. In the meantime, the world's sole superpower was using every ounce of influence, threatening every ally, burning diplomatic bridges, just to capture one man. July 2, 2013. The craziest thing happened. The Bolivian presidential plane, carrying President Evo Morales, was forced to land in Vienna. Why? Someone spread a rumor that Snowden might be on board. France, Spain, Italy, and Portugal abruptly closed their airspace to a presidential jet. That's like forcing Air Force One to land because you think someone suspicious is aboard. It was unprecedented, possibly even illegal, but it happened. Austrian officials boarded the plane, searched it as if looking for common criminals' drugs. No Snowden, just a humiliated president of a sovereign nation. Morales later called it a kidnapping. If they do this to me, imagine what they will do to him. August 1, 2013. A plot twist no one saw coming. Russia granted temporary asylum to Snowden, not because Putin loves whistleblowers. He certainly does not, but because humiliating the US was worth more than US friendship. Snowden finally walked out of the airport, wearing the same t-shirt he wore 40 days prior, into a country he never intended to live in. President Obama canceled a summit with Putin. The US media went ballistic. He's a Russian spy now. Except he wasn't. He was just a man who ran out of airports. Russia was not his choice. It was his only option. The alternative was a black site prison, or worse. But this was the price. Snowden would never see his family again, never return to his country, never have a normal life. He traded everything. For one thing, the truth. Was it worth it? And more importantly, what happens when the world's most powerful intelligence agency decides to make an example out of someone? The aftermath. To parallel RAILRIS, the fallout split into two separate realities. In one, Snowden was a traitor who aided terrorists and betrayed his country. In the other reality, he was the Paul Revere of the digital age, warning that the surveillance state was here. Both realities exist simultaneously, depending on which news channel you watch. But facts don't care about opinions. Within 6 months of Snowden's revelations, measurable changes had occurred. Tech companies, fearing customer loss, rolled out end-to-end encryption. WhatsApp, used by 2 billion people, made every message unreadable, except by the sender and receiver. Apple designed iPhones that even Apple couldn't unlock. The very NSA leaks made surveillance infinitely harder. President Obama, who once promised the most transparent administration in history, was forced to admit there was a problem. In January 2014, he gave a speech that sounded like Snowden wrote it. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. He announced reforms, created oversight boards, pretending this was the plan all along. The true victory came in June 2015. Congress passed the USA Freedom Act, ending the bulk phone collection program. The international impacts spread outside. Brazil built its own internet infrastructure to avoid us snooping. Europe passed powerful privacy laws with multi-billion-dollar fines for violations. China and Russia used Snowden's disclosures as propaganda. Tech companies played both sides. Publicly, they were outraged by NSA spying, but privately they still complied with secret orders. And then came the vindication. September 2, 2020. The U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled the NSA's phone program was illegal. Always was illegal. The judges went further. They said the intelligence officials who defended it were not telling the truth. Snowden tweeted from Moscow, "I never imagined I'd live to see. Our courts condemn the NSA's activities as unlawful. The intelligence community's verdict is unanimous. Snowden is a traitor who damaged national security. Their evidence is classified. Of course. Trust us," they say. The same people who lied about WMDs in Iraq, who lied about torture, who lied about mass surveillance, until Snowden proved they were lying. Today, Snowden lives somewhere in Moscow, has a Russian wife, a child, Russian citizenship he never wanted. He appears via encrypted video link at conferences, still charges no speaking fees, still believes he did the right thing, still can't come home. Without facing life in prison, the question that matters isn't whether Snowden is a hero or traitor. The question is, do you have less privacy or more? Because of what he did.